Gators Breakdown episode 38 is live and ready to go. Midweek podcast time. And you know what that means. That means Joey joins me for this midweek podcast. Got plenty to talk about with lack of coaching hires for the Gators. Is it hurting them on the recruiting trail? Recruiting just in general, and we got plenty to talk about here on Gators Breakdown. So, like I mentioned, you can find us on Twitter at Gators Breakdown. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC, and Joey Joey _ Sports Talk or something, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah, on Twitter for Joey, that's where you can find him. So we'll talk plenty of recruiting coming up and coaching hires, possible coaching hires for the Gators coming up. So you can find this live right now on YouTube, and audio versions will be put on SoundCloud and iTunes for you to subscribe, share, review, all those good things here on Gators Breakdown. Joey, a little tough basketball game we just got through watching, but besides that, how are we doing tonight?
Oh, man, that was what an embarrassment that was. I have no words. The lack of execution on the offensive side of the ball, where we've heard that before. The University of Florida, or should I say a disease that's just run rampant through the football program and the basketball program. But after Saturday's game against Georgia, that nail biter, and then tonight's game was just, I just didn't have a good feeling going into South Carolina. They're a good team. A really good team. I think they're going to be in the tournament this year. They very well, they're probably right up there with Florida and Kentucky as the three best teams in the conference, obviously. So it's going to be interesting, come February, into the heart of the SEC play, into January, beginning of February, where kind of South Carolina is and where Florida is. Everybody's just kind of trailing Kentucky at this point, but I do think both of those teams have the capability of beating Kentucky, especially at home.
For sure. A little bit of basketball talk there before we dive into recruiting and some coaching situations and for Florida. So we won't talk too much basketball. We'll get more into that once recruiting kind of slows down for us. But we know that's a hot button topic right now in the Gators world is recruiting, coaching hires. We saw, kind of in a way stuck my foot in my mouth the night before on Twitter. Scott Strickland was speaking in Orlando and kind of hinted at, McElwain may not make a hire, coaching hires before National Signing Day, dealing with recruiting. It even said kind of McElwain's dealing with recruiting. I read the tea leaves as, McElwain won't make a hire before National Signing Day, and kind of, I could have said it better. I'll go that way with it. Some people would defend the way I said it, and probably that's the way Strickland meant it. But, I should have said may not make a hire. Didn't try to blow it up. Wasn't trying to make a name for myself or anything. Not at all what I meant. But, we live and learn. We'll move on. Got a lot of support from out there. So, but Joey, what did you take from the comments and how they were maybe construed and thrown out there?
Well, obviously you didn't mean anything by your tweet. I mean, it wasn't, like you wanted to put him out of context or anything like that. That's just kind of how it was put. And you just kind of relayed it, and it wasn't like you were misquoting him or you were, intentionally trying to stir the pot, so, anybody that has a problem with you is just, being a troll and just needs to go away. I completely understood what you said. That's why I said when I had quoted your tweet, I said I didn't buy it. I didn't believe that. I really do think that even if it's not announced until after signing day, I honestly believe that the hires are already in place. I think that recruits are being told who the hires are. I'm pretty sure that they've agreed in principle, whoever the coaches are that McElwain has decided on. I know you got some inside info on who possibly that could be. Maybe like a Jeff Stoutland for offensive line, or, I see Seidler. I know you had a couple names that you threw out there to everybody, but, I tweeted yesterday as well, got a lot of attention. I was told by somebody inside the program that Greg Nord has been pulled off of visiting recruits. He is not recruiting for Florida right now. I said, take that for what it's worth. I have no other information besides that. I wasn't told he was being fired. I wasn't told, that he was staying. So, I'm not going to sit here and, claim that I know about his job security or job status. I'm just telling you what I was told, that he is not recruiting actively for Florida at this time, which, could mean that he isn't going to be retained at Florida. That it could also be that he's going to be retained in some sort of support staff. Because I know he is friends with Jim McElwain, and I know Jim and him are very close. So I could see him staying in a support role and somebody else taking over tight ends. And we do know that Nord struggles with recruiting. We know that in the past he's struggled with recruiting, so it's no big secret. McElwain has made it known that he wants to get better at recruiting, so he's going to hire somebody that's going to be fierce in the living room as well as fierce on the field. One thing that Scott Strickland did clear up with us on Twitter with his follow-up tweet was that they were approved, 3 off the field staff recruiters, which to me means that might be 3 open positions for on-field staff that they have yet to announce. So we know one of them is O-line, the other one could be tight ends, and another one, linebackers. So,
and with Nord special teams, but that not necessarily, not necessarily concentrating on recruiting special teams. But yeah, there you go.
Somebody else could take special teams. I mean, there's whoever McElwain may hire is a special teams plus linebackers or special teams plus tight ends. So, usually special teams coordinators, if you're not in the NFL, usually they're a position coach that specializes in special teams. Very rare do you see just somebody that's a special teams coach. Most of the time it's either a position coach or it might be the head coach. Urban Meyer coached special teams at Florida. That was his thing. You just never know with that. But like I said, there seems to be 3 open positions possibly available for on-field staff. So we just don't know. But I am being told, like I said, that Greg Nord is not recruiting for Florida. He is not visiting recruits. And I'm pretty positive that information is accurate. I don't know what you're hearing about any of these hires coming up or anything like that, but I highly doubt that McElwain does not have people in place to fill those positions already.
One guy on the trail, and I tweeted this out yesterday of how fans could not be happy about it, is Drew Hughes on the trail.
Yes.
I mean, yes, he may not be a coach on the field, but from reviews the last couple of times he's been on, he was on the trail last year because before the Torian Gray hire. He was having to out there and recruit as well. The reviews that last year were pretty good. So I think, if you follow some recruits on Twitter and the ones that he's, visiting at their homes and stuff, that, he's nailing those in-home visits out of the park too. So while he may not be an on the field coach, he's still, a valuable piece of this staff out there in the public. So I think that's definitely not to be overlooked. There is Drew Hughes on the trail.
Yeah, as I tweeted out as well yesterday, that Drew Hughes walked into Oliver Martin, 4-star wide receiver Oliver Martin, who played in the Army All-American game 2 weeks ago. Walked into his house, they offered him, and he's got a bunch of offers from big-time programs, and he's coming to visit Florida this weekend. That's huge. I mean, Florida needs offensive players. You're going to lose Callaway probably after the season. You need weapons. You need guys that are going to be able to step up and perform. And, I'm really excited. I watched some of Oliver Martin's tape actually to kind of just get an idea of who he was, because I've heard of him before, but I never really, focused on who he was. This kid lights it up, man. I mean, he may be from Iowa, and Iowa may not have big time football, but I'm telling you, he's tough as nails, and he's a good wide receiver. And I even watched some of the Under Armour the Army All-American practices that he was in, and he was torching some pretty good defensive backs. I mean, he's legit. I mean, he's good. He's about 6'1". He's a speedy guy. He's a slot guy, and I would love to see him commit to Florida after his official visit this weekend. That would be I think a fantastic boost to a class that we obviously want to see improve over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it'd be nice, to get him. Daquan Green's already committed, so if they could get James Robison as well, tag in Oliver Martin as well, and I tell you what, that's a three 4 stars right there that you have in your receiving core that you're bringing in, and it is, pretty neat that he's coming in right away after just being visited from Drew Hughes, and how Florida is now really getting him in the fold to go there. So I guess I'll hit the theme of this podcast, and I tweeted it out. Kind of the title and theme of this one. We talked about these hires and do they need to be made. Joey, in your opinion, do these hires need to be made soon, and is it hurting Florida on the recruiting trail? And I'll say right now, more particular for this 2017 class.
We'll see. I mean, like I had said to you a few minutes ago, I'm pretty sure that McElwain already has an idea of who he's hiring. I'm pretty sure that there's already been handshakes and principal agreements. And I'm pretty sure that the recruits are, if they have questions, are being told who the hires are. So I think it's just fans that are not sleeping at night, staying awake with not knowing, and to be honest, that's not Jim McElwain's responsibility, to tell the fans who the coaching hire is when they want him to tell them, Jim McElwain comes from the school of Saban, and he's a cloak and dagger type guy. We know that. I mean, he's kept many things secret from the public, has kept injuries secret, and, plays and schemes and players and starters. And this is just another link in the chain for the, McElwain of who he is. He's not going to appease the fans by just coming out and blasting, oh my gosh, we hired this guy. He's sensational. He's not about that. He's about, about results. And, if he's getting recruits by whispering to them who the hire is going to be, that's fine for him. He's okay with that. He doesn't need to, he's not a showy kind of guy. We know that. He's from Montana. The highlight of his life was spending his summers at Flathead Lake, probably throwing stones on the lake and fishing and stuff. He's not a flashy guy. He doesn't need to make headlines. And so I'm not going to say that him not announcing it to the world is hurting recruiting. Obviously it's not. Leon Hebert, that was reported that he asked him, Coach Summers, I thought he was going to be my guy, and now he's gone. And supposedly McElwain kind of told him, you're going to love the hire, so that just tells me that he knows who his hire is. Obviously, I mean, you're not going to say something like that unless you know who it's going to be. Thank goodness, Leon Hebert's main recruiter is Randy Shannon. So, right. He's not going anywhere. So that helps with Florida. Mike Summers really wasn't recruiting anybody. TJ Moore, but McElwain kind of sealed that up when he visited him yesterday. Right. I mean, TJ Moore was ecstatic about McElwain, showing up and visiting him. So I don't think the Summers thing has affected recruiting at all. I don't think that him not naming a coach and blasting it all over social media and blasting it on the internet is hurting recruiting. I think it's hurting fans' egos.
Yeah, I mean, you believe me, we can tell. Well, being on the social media, like people come at us and who we think the hires will be, and we've thrown some names out there of some names that we've heard, and
it's like they get mad too when you don't tell them. Like they want answers right then and there, and it's like, look, I get some inside information, but I'm not in Coach McElwain's living room. I don't sleep next to him at night. He. I know maybe a little bit more than you do. I can't, don't get mad because I can't give you a name of who, exactly who it's going to be.
Right. I mean, and as we know, hires are, one of the things that are kept most close to the vest. I mean, we saw the Mike Locksley situation of, I mean, yes, it was out there. He was close to coming to Florida, but Bama had some things happen when Lane Kiffin was no longer the OC, and Sarkisian moved on field, and Cristobal got moved to offensive coordinator at Oregon. The job he took there, some things opened up for Locksley, and you can't blame him for wanting to stick at the program that is the program in college football right now, who, can catapult him to maybe, rehabbing his reputation and getting him a next job. Should McElwain have a backup plan? Maybe. How do we know he didn't? We don't know
exactly. We don't know.
Exactly. We don't know. And, a lot of these other coaches who he may be bringing in, they're at current jobs. They could get some bonuses if they stick around their current job. Maybe
Yep.
McElwain's helping them out a little bit, by sticking around through February. So, there's a lot of things that's going on, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
And a lot of contracts run through the 31st of this month.
There you go. Right.
A lot of coaches' contracts end at the end of January,
Yep.
Specifically for recruiting purposes.
Exactly.
We know that. So a lot of times they can't break their contract without their buyouts or whatever, some penalties. So if he hires them February 1st, which is signing day, what's the difference? As long as he knows that they're coming, like I said, I'm sure there's agreements in place. I'm sure there's principal agreements, So just because it's not contractually agreed upon and it's not blasted on ESPN by Brett McMurphy doesn't mean that it hasn't already been done, folks. I mean, seriously.
Right. And, here's kind of what I'm thinking too. Concentrate on finishing this 2017 class. The other classes, 2018, 2019, they'll end up taking care of themselves. What difference can a coach make to some of these recruits who may or may not know for the last 2 weeks until signing day? I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference in this 2017 class.
And Florida's biggest targets right now are not without coaches. Like the position coaches are in place. I mean, Randy Shannon is recruiting Levi Jones, so he's there. CJ Henderson's being recruited, I believe, by Torian Gray, so, these guys are already there. Kyliana Hebert and TJ Moore are offensive linemen, but I'm pretty sure McElwain has consoled them and told them, what's going on. He's not keeping them in the dark. McElwain's not an idiot.
Right. And the way Florida recruits, they recruit by area. They don't necessarily send position coaches to recruit.
Yeah, exactly.
And, because first of all, it's not really, smart to do it that way. You can't send one guy all over the state. You go recruit by a region. And we know that's why Randy Shannon's in South Florida. He knows that region better than anybody on this staff. He knows he has his connections there. That's just how.
Yep. Tim Skipper's on the West Coast, Tim Skipper's recruiting Elijah Blades, and that's just what he does. That's his area, so they get close to these position coaches that might be on a completely different side of the football than they're going to play anyway. So
it's when
these are the guys, the relationships. Drew Hughes isn't coaching football, he's bringing Oliver Martin in, and he's not even going to be on the field, in educating these guys on the football field. So you can't specifically say that one positional change or one coach being gone at a position is going to affect recruiting in a negative way. I think more so if your recruiter that you lost or position coach you lost was an excellent recruiter. Like, say Florida had Mario Cristobal or, somebody like that, an elite level recruiter. Losing that guy is going to affect recruiting, obviously. But let's not say that Nord and Summers are exactly ball-busting recruiters. I mean, come on now.
Right. And, of course, players would like to know who the position coach is going to be. But like you said, it's not, it's not make or break with the way Florida recruits, and as you mentioned before, some recruits may even have an idea before they, they sign on signing day. So, do they want to be tied to a coach? Yeah, I'm sure to a point. But, like even James Robison, who was visiting his official visit this past weekend, he got to hang out with Dixon, the wide receiver coach. He didn't really get to hang out with him much. That's what these official visits are for. They get to know their position coaches a little bit more. So, that answer, yes, it will be different for every recruit. Do they want to get more, recruited more by their position coach? I'm sure they all would, but as we mentioned, that's not the way it necessarily happens. Most big programs recruit by region and not necessarily by position coach. So, we try and clear some of the air with the way, recruiting is shaking out and everything. But I don't necessarily think right now, with 2 weeks going until signing day, that the lack of hires is hurting recruiting for this cycle.
Yeah, I'm not worried actually at all. My top 5 recruiting targets that Florida's going after right now, the coaching changes really have little to no effect on any of those guys anyway. So I just don't see, how people would believe that, not going on social media and blasting out an elite hire would change anything. Right.
So Joey, you kind of mentioned your most wanted targets or whatever. If if you want to throw those out there, or just throw a couple out there, I mean, who do you want to see Florida end with, and how do you think they'll fit right here into this Florida program?
Well, starting with number one, I think, especially after this weekend, I think the number one target that Florida needs right now is Levi Jones. You're getting him out of Texas. He basically kind of was an unknown to Florida fans up until recently. He's a 4-star. His father has 3 Super Bowl rings, so he comes from a great breed. Good blood genes, and he got on campus this weekend with his mom and his dad and fell in love with it. We're losing linebackers. We were really short linebacker when Jarrett Davis and Alex Anzalone went down. So, we got, Voshon Joseph and David Reese coming, and those guys, but you need a lineage at the linebacker position. That's a position, I believe, running back, linebacker, and quarterback are, I think, the 3 positions that you need leadership at. Like, you need guys that just continuously kind of a train of recruits. Like, one guy is gone, okay, you got a guy that's been there for a year already, and he steps right in. That's just one of those positions. And I think Levi Jones is probably my number one target right now for Florida. I think if Florida lands him, especially coming in kind of late in the process, so to say, I think that would be a home run, slam dunk recruitment by Randy Shannon.
Yeah, and to speak towards that before you move on to someone else's, is also a chance to beat Florida State for a recruit. Levi Jones before his visit to Gainesville last weekend said Florida State was his leader. He left Gainesville saying Florida was his leader. Now I know that's maybe the kind of natural progression of things. He's just coming off of a Florida visit, so more than likely he would put him first. But if that can stick that way, if Florida can stay in first and get his signature on signing day, maybe that's a small win against the school out west.
Absolutely. And I can't begin to tell you how much I support what you just said. I mean, you have to, recruiting is also a rivalry off the field. It is, Florida and Florida State, it's not only to the fan base, it's to the coaches. We saw what happened with, Dante Fowler. We saw what happened with Delvin Cook.
Matt Elam.
Yeah. Matt Elam. So, you just, that's just what it is. Shabar Manuel, obviously he's not even around anymore, but
still,
but still, that's the kind of how it is, guys, coaches will tell guys to stay committed until signing day and flip on them, just to, rile the fan base up and, rile the recruiting up, that's how you stick it to recruit. That's how you stick it to coaches on the recruiting trail as well. I think on the field's more for the players. Yeah, absolutely. On the field's more for the players, recruiting's more for the coaches. They have rivalries. And going back into my leading targets, I think number 2 is Kylian Hebert. I think that, he's a can't miss offensive tackle. I think he's going to play as a freshman if Florida flips him. I think he'll probably start on the right side. Obviously, you'll have left tackle Martez Ivy. And
what do you do with Taylor?
I think you move Taylor to left guard.
Okay.
I think you do. It depends on how Hebert turns out. But I think Juwan Taylor is talented enough where he can play any position on the line. We saw Martez Ivy can play any position, but Martez Ivy's obviously, he's a junior this year and he's an elite prospect, and you move him to left tackle. We saw what happened when you moved him to left tackle after Sharp went down for 2 games or whatever, a game and a half. The offensive line looked better. But I think Juwan Taylor, if he doesn't, move to, maybe you even move Kylian Hebert to guard, his freshman year, right, and let, Juwan Taylor stay at the right tackle position. And then when Ivy leaves, then you move Juwan Taylor to left tackle and move,
there's many ways.
Hebert to right tackle, that's kind of, I guess, mix and match, patch up, Third guy is CJ Henderson. CJ Henderson right now is the kind of defensive back that Florida needs. He's that Quincy Wilson to me. Ooh. He's the guy that is not getting all, he's still an Under Armour All-American, but he's not getting that, 5-star Tease Tabor, like, kind of hype that he was out of high school, or Vernon Hargreaves. but he's a 4-star, but he's still an elite player. I mean, CJ Henderson is awesome. I mean, if you got to watch him in the Under Armour practices, he was locking guys down. I was watching it on every night. I was recording it when they were on tape delay, and he was excellent. And in the secondary, that's obviously going to be short on players coming up in the future. You do have, Marco Wilson coming in, and Elijah Blades, and possibly Brad Stuart. We haven't talked about him,
Right.
but guys like that coming in. And number 4 is Devon Hunter. Just visited this weekend. Devon Hunter is a monster. I think he could be the next type Matt Elam type guy. I mean, he's a freak. You get to watch his tape.
Yeah, and we'll know Friday where he commits.
Yes, we will know. He's committing at halftime of his high school basketball game on at 8:00 or 9:00 something, and in Virginia. And it's between Florida and Virginia Tech right now. Everybody else is eliminated. It's just between Florida and Virginia Tech. Thank goodness we got his last visit. That's all I can say, because from what I heard, him and his dad had a great time at Florida. And I hopefully that tipped the scales, because we need a safety.
And today's Wednesday, as we record this podcast, and Florida went in home with him today as well.
Yes, yep. which is huge. I mean, 2 days before you're going to commit, Florida gets to go in home with him. I mean, that's huge. When you lose a guy like Keanu Neal and Marcus May in back-to-back years to the draft, that you have to replace him with somebody. Obviously, we have a lot of faith in Chauncey Gardner back there, a lot of faith in Nick Washington, probably going to start at safety next year. Marcel Harris obviously coming back. But still, you need somebody that you can let play as a freshman, and he will play as a freshman. That's going to be ready year 2, because you're going to lose both Marcel Harris and Nick Washington back there. And
one more thing about him. One more thing about him. Is there a better last name for a safety
than Hunter?
Hunter.
Yeah,
there you go.
I like. And my number 5 is James Robison. Obviously, I mean, he's probably at the top of Florida's board right now, and they're in the chalkboard, and he's in state. He's one of the top wide receivers in the state and in the country. And I just think I think you have to keep your guys in state that are top level prospects. I mean, you just have to. James Robison his family wants him to go to Florida. His family wants him to stay close to home. They may be worried about him kind of getting in with the wrong crowd, possibly, if he goes out of state and they kind of can't keep tabs on him. But I think James Robinson would be, when Callaway leaves next year, James Robinson and Tyree Cleveland is not a bad duo to have, 1A and 1B, in 2 years from now. So, hopefully Florida has a quarterback by then, but those are my top 5 targets for coming up, signing days in literally 2 weeks from today.
Yep, and I'll add one more to that list before we call this one a podcast and put it out there for everyone. But before I move on, for James Robinson, he is going to visit Ohio State now. From Lakeland, that's a scary proposition when you put Urban Meyer's name with Lakeland recruits. But like you, Joey, I think he wants to, he stays close to home for a myriad of reasons. And it looks like he had a good visit to Gainesville this past weekend. And looks like he got to know Kerry Dixon well, his wide receiver, the wide receiver position coach at Florida. So we'll see what happens there with James Robinson. But the other one I'll add to the list, the one that I like a lot, I kind of just rounds out. You couldn't have hit the other guys better than I could. So, I'll move on from those guys. But to Daryl Slayton, he's a guy who's going to be able to play offensive line or defensive line for the Gators. We know the need for defensive tackle for Florida.
I think he's going to play tackle. I think he'll play defensive tackle.
I think he will too. But especially because of the need, just so much need that Florida has there, and the recruits they're bringing in among the offensive line. You're probably looking at 3-4 stars there. So Slayton will not have to play offensive line, and he's even said he prefers defensive tackle. He's named Florida as leader around the Army game. He dominated both sides of the ball at the Army game. I mean, come on, 6'5", 360 pounds. Let's sign that guy up right now.
Yeah, and he balled out at the Army game too.
Yeah,
man.
he did. Yeah,
he was all over the place. I mean, he was on every play. I just love him as well. I'm really glad you named a guy like him. But to bring up another name too, a guy that we had actually mentioned a little while ago is Brad Stewart out of New Orleans. When you can get a guy out of the LSU stronghold, I mean, that's big time. I think Brad Stewart is actually a little undervalued. I think he's being a little undersold. I really like him a lot. And he can play safety or corner, guys that you can, move back and forth. But I really like him, and I really want to see him in a Gator uniform next year.
All right, before we go, January 20th visit list. Before just coming up weekend, Jake Allen, Malik Davis, Daquan Green, Oliver Martin, Zach Bird commit there. TJ Moore commit, of course. Green and Malik Davis, Jake Allen commits as well. Tony Gray, offensive tackle there. Elijah Conliff, coming off a visit of Tennessee, is going to visit Florida
he's
now.
a sleeper too. Elijah Conliff, he's a sleeper. I was going to name him kind of, but I think he could turn out to be a very, very sneaky good prospect for Florida.
Yeah, from the Virginia area. So a lot of people were wondering if somehow the Loxley rumors to Florida is kind of what maybe led to this, but maybe Florida can do something there anyway. Commit Zachary Carter's coming in. We just mentioned Slayton. Tadero Slayton will be in this weekend as well. Another defensive tackle target, Tyrone Truesdale. Nick Smith, now current commit Marco Wilson as well, Quincy Wilson's little brother. CJ Henderson, and to round it out, Juwan Burgess will be visiting as well. So there's your list coming up for this weekend for official visit weekend number 2.
And another thing about Conliff as well is that another rivalry off the field. Tennessee is supposed to be his favorite. I mean, if Florida can steal a recruit from Tennessee, I mean, that's huge as well. So, I did want to throw that out there for Conliff. But, one thing I love about Florida this year is they're getting big-time prospects late in the recruiting process to visit. That's huge. When you can get guys on campus a week or 2 weeks before signing day, that's huge for an official visit. Florida's got, huge names coming, next weekend, right before signing day. So, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this class. I think this class could end up being a very good class. Like I said, I expect this class as of right now to where I assume prospects, that commit and who we miss on. I think Florida finishes about 12, maybe 11, right outside the top 10. But if Florida gets a surprise flip on signing day, which is very possible, it could be a top 10 class.
Yeah, those names you're talking about next weekend, we'll just quickly hit on that before we go. Bear, we mentioned the Gaddy twins, were committed to Tennessee at one time, committed to Maryland now. Most people say all they need is a Florida offer, and they will be Gators. So that's two defensive tackles right there. Yep. That would imagine, already help. And
one's really good, and the other is just okay.
Yeah,
but they come as a package deal. So,
and I think the last set of twins from Florida did pretty good for themselves. So.
Yeah. The one that stayed wasn't as good as the one that left early, but yeah.
And Jerez Parks and LeBrian Ray, Brad Stewart, 3 big names.
LeBrian Ray, that's who I'm looking out for right now because he's a 5-star on most sites. And if Florida lands LeBrian Ray, I think Florida's a top 10 class this year.
There we go.
I really do. Yeah.
There we go. You heard it from Joey. You heard it from me. Joey, I think it was a pretty good episode, man. I think we did pretty good for ourselves.
Still alive, huh?
Oh, yeah, still alive. So there you go. That was the list of about these 2 weeks of visits coming up. This is Gators Breakdown, episode 37, where we head on is the lack of coaching hires affecting McElwain and the Gators on the recruiting trail, and dove into a little bit of recruiting coming up for the Gators. So, Joey, anything else before we head off tonight?
I just want to say, rest easy, Gator fans. Rest easy, okay? I'm gonna use the Aaron Rodgers. He might be going to the Super Bowl this year. RELAX.
Relax. So for David, for Joey, this is Gators Breakdown. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you later on.